Welcome back to the channel, everypony. We have an absolute banger of a video for you here today. I know it's been a minute since I sat down and made a video for you guys. Sickness and general lack of news in regard to COD has kept me away, but we are back with a reaction video that hits a little close to home for me as a former game dev. Of course, we all know what happened to the ill-fated Highguard by Wildlight Entertainment. I was thinking about making a first impressions video upon the game's release a few weeks ago, but it honestly felt like low-hanging fruit. Everypony and their mother was making videos or streaming it live to rightfully criticize the game for 1, having no cohesive visual identity, 2, throwing 99 different mechanics at the wall to see what stuck, and 3, being poorly optimized Unreal Engine 5 slop. The question is, how did the developers who spent years on Highguard not take note of these criticisms and pivot in a different direction? Well, the answer to that question is toxic positivity. Josh Sabell, now a former technical artist for Wildlight, who was laid off along with 90% of employees that worked on Highguard, released an article on X that paints a grim picture of Western game development. Let's get into the article here and maybe we'll find some clues as to what went wrong with Highguard. He starts with, "The day leading to the Game Awards 2025 was among the most exciting of my life." He says, "After 2.5 years of passionately working on Highguard, we were ready to reveal it to the world. The future seemed bright." Well, that reveal did not go as planned. Did it there, Mr. Sobel. "Everyone I knew who had any connection to the team or project had the same sentiments. Quote, this is lightning in a bottle. I trust this team. This has mainstream hit written all over it. There's no way this will flop. I could play the game all day." Every single one of these quotes has aged like milk. The internal pre-reveal feedback, even from unbiased sources, was quite positive. Well, were they really unbiased if it was like quite positive? Like, all right. And where it was negative, it was constructive and often actionable. People who played the game, including us, had a blast. And since we were an independent self-published studio built with royalties in mind, that means investors, many of us were hoping this could finally be the thing that broke the millennial financial curse. Well, here's the thing. You didn't break the millennial financial curse. It is still in effect as a result of this game's release. But then the trailer came out and it was all downhill from there. Content creators love to point out the bias in folks who give positive previews after being flown out for an event, but ignore the fact when their negative leaning content gets 10 times the engagement of positive. They've got just as much incentive to lean in a disingenuous direction, whether consciously or not. First of all, we're going to need to see a figure or some sort of citation for negative leaning content getting 10 times the engagement of positive content. That's quite the outrageous claim. I kind of need to see like proof or evidence of that. The reason why negative leaning content was getting lots of engagement was because that was everyone's perception of the trailer. The hate started immediately. In addition to dogpiling on the trailer, I personally came under fire due to my naivete on Twitter, which almost all of my now former coworkers had learned to avoid during their previous game launches. Your coworkers have shipped absolute fucking dog shit before, and they neglected to tell you to stay off Twitter. That's on them, honestly. After setting my Twitter account to private to protect my sanity, many content creators made videos and posts about me and my cowardice, amassing millions of views and inadvertently sending hundreds of angry gamers into my replies. Oh no, they laughed at me for being proud of the game, told me to get out the McDonald's applications, and mocked me for listing having autism in my bio, which they seemed to think was evidence the game would be, quote, woke trash. All of this was very emotionally taxing. Well, I wouldn't say putting autism in your bio is necessarily woke trash, maybe pronouns, but I see his current bio has had autism taken out of it. So maybe that hit a nerve, in particular with randoms on X. There is much constructive criticism that can be and has been said about Highguard's trailer, marketing, and launch, but I don't think it's my place to commentate on that. I also don't think there's any way to know whether the launch would have fared better or worse without the massive spotlight that was thrown onto us in response to the Game Awards trailer placement, but we never got that chance. When it comes to the Game Awards, I mean, Jeff Keighley is kind of like out of touch. I think when he tested Highguard, that must have been like the first multiplayer game he had played in like 20 years up to that. Because guys, he doesn't play video games anymore. I don't know, like, sorry to break the news to you, but he doesn't really play. But when he gets his hands on a multiplayer, on a modern multiplayer game, his mind is going to be blown, and he's going to want to put Highguard in the Game Awards. It's unfortunate that the Divinity had their the little statue it had to promote the game. It leaked early, so Jeff pivoted and had that go first when it was, I'm pretty sure, was supposed to go last. So that left like a huge void in the last reveal, and Jeff called an audible and put Highguard in that spot, and it was a bad decision. Like, what can you do? All right, let's continue. We were turned into a joke from minute one, largely due to false assumptions about $1 million ad placement, which even prominent journalists soon began to state as fact. Within minutes, it was decided the game was dead on arrival, and creators now had free rage bait content for a month. Every one of our videos on social media got downvoted to hell. Well, here's the thing. On your social media, you had a X account and a YouTube account. The YouTube account had very little engagement for a game's YouTube account, which is not a good sign. And you posted exactly one video to X, which couldn't even really be downvoted because there's no downvotes on X. So I don't know what he's talking about. Comment sections were flooded with copy-paste meme phrases such as Concord 2 and Titanfall 3 died for this. You think, you guys, if you had made like a mech game like Titanfall, you would have had at least like a niche community that cared about it, you know, with that style of game, and have like an actual cohesive visual identity behind it. I could see that being a lot more successful than what Highguard ended up. And people drew the comparisons to Concord because Concord suffered the same problem of being in an extremely crowded live service environment with no cohesive visual identity and no hook, which is appropriately why you got the label of Concord 2. At launch, we received over 14,000 review bombs from users with less than an hour playtime. Many didn't even finish the required tutorial. Does it take an hour of playtime to know a bad game is bad? I don't think it does. In discussions online about Highguard, Concord, 2XKO, and such, it is often pointed out by gamers that devs like to blame gamers for their failures, and that's silly. As if gamers have no power, but they do, a lot of it. I'm not saying our failure is purely the fault of gamer culture and that the game would have thrived without negative discourse, but it absolutely played a role. All products are at the whims of the consumers, and the consumers put absurd amounts of effort into slandering Highguard, and it worked. Was it slander, or was it commentary on how the game wasn't like engaging at all? We're putting words out there that just like don't apply to the situation. Many of Wildlight's former developers will now be forced to assimilate back into the actual corporate industry. Okay, Wildlight Entertainment is short for Wildlight Entertainment Incorporated, which is a part of the corporate industry. Many gamers accused Wildlight of being part of, well, they are. Now every time someone thinks about leaving the golden handcuffs behind in favor of making a new multiplayer game the indie way, they'll say, remember when gamers didn't even give Wildlight a chance? Soon, if this pattern continues, all that will be left are corporations, at least in the multiplayer space. Innovation is on life support. Please tell me you're not associating Highguard with innovation, because Highguard has to be one of the least innovative games I've ever seen in my entire life. Moving on, we gotta keep going. Even if Highguard had a rocky launch, our independent, self-published, dev-led studio full of passionate people just trying to make a fun game with zero AI and zero corporate oversight deserved better than this. Deserved. I see that word. Game developers, you don't deserve anything, actually. You have to make something good and people will pay for it, and then the success will come to you. You don't deserve the success going in. You point out zero AI and zero corporate oversight. The fact that Highguard, without those two things, still turned out to be a product that a lot of people associated with AI and corporate oversight is an indictment on you for making a game that looks like it uses AI and it looked like it had a shit ton of corporate oversight. So that's on you, not us. We deserved, no you didn't, the bare minimum of not having our downfall be gleefully manifested. See, the manifestation here, though, was on your part of manifesting a game that did not engage with consumers. So again, that's on you. I wish the best of luck to the few, 90%, right, a few who remain at Wildlight and hope Highguard can stay the course, I give it a month. Really, like staying the course, I mean, come on. I still believe in it, and so do the fans we reach who continue to champion it on the subreddit, Discord, Twitch, and social media. And even though this adventure has come to an abrupt and emotionally challenging close, I don't regret 1 second of it. Well, I think you should have some regrets, because if you look at the subreddit, you look at social media in general, the sentiment around Highguard is that the servers will be shutting down soon because the game did not engage people. So again, I would personally have some regrets, but you know, maybe that's just me. Also, I wanted to shout out some incredibly supportive journalists and creators who genuinely made a night and day difference in enduring the past 2 months. All these folks deserve far more credit than they get for their empathy, intuition, and integrity. So he lists off a bunch of journalists, which is, again, a part of the problem, because these Western game journalists were kissing your collective asses, which is why the game turned out the way it did. But wait until you see this absolute gem from Mr. Sobel that got immediately deleted when he realized how bad of a cope it really was. He says, "Hi, I grew these doing like a food analogy. This is like an American thing, by the way. We do food analogies for everything. Hi, I grew this red apple in my yard. Would you like it for free? If you like it, I accept tips, but no pressure. I only like green apples. Also, there's a weird bump on. I'm gonna make sure all my friends review bomb your web page over this." Damn, that's pretty mean. Glad I have friends who appreciate my efforts to support me. Well, toxic positivity is ruining the farming industry. First thing, farmers are not on Yelp, moron. Second thing, no pressure. You have to make something that's worth money to stay employed. That is pressure. It seems Mr. Sobel understands economics as well as he understands farming. And note at the very end of the article that we were just reading, where he talked about supportive journalists. Let's see what game journalists have to say about Highguard's performance and its complete delusion. Yes, losing 98% of your player base and laying off most of the staff behind the game is a surefire sign of artistic success. It didn't flop, the journalist says, as he later admits in the comments of his article that yes, it was indeed a flop. There's this narrative that essentially the evil, problematic gamers with a capital G gave the game a bad rep and caused it to do worse than it otherwise would have. But as Fake Wizard points out here, Highguard was fully translated and accessible in 10 languages and playable worldwide, meaning you had the entire world as your player base, and you still lost 97k players on Steam. This isn't a Western chud's problem. The world rejected Highguard. And how does Wildlight Entertainment and the game industry respond? I gotta blame somebody, otherwise it's all my fault. Well, fuck that. As I said in the beginning of the video, a game like Highguard completely crashing and burning, it's a little close to home as a former game dev. A few years ago, I volunteered my efforts to program gameplay elements of a PvP class-based FPS called Contact Spotted. The problem with the game was, outside of having literally no resources to help develop it, was realizing just how crowded the market is. There were measures in place to make sure the game, should it have been finished, was playable no matter what happened. So offline bot matches, player hosted servers, etc. However, Highguard has none of those measures in place. Once the game closes its servers due to underperforming in a crowded market, which I'm suspecting will be sooner rather than later, you'll have no way to play it whatsoever. And maybe that's for the best. But as we wrap up this video, I want to remind you guys, go to w.gg, use code JimmyHomeless at checkout for 10% off new flavors such as the officially licensed free run Beyond Journey's End Honeydew and White Grape Energy Drink Tub. It will give you the strength, energy, and strenergy for those long gaming sessions into the night. Use code JimmyHomeless to support the channel. Let me know what you think in the comments below about the flop that is Highguard, and have a nice day.